while we're talking about tax drag, I was asked to go deeper into this, and I want to talk about it, right? So it's structure over deduction. When we had a job and and that's all we had, and I know some of you that's where you're at, that's okay. We talk a lot about deduction, but once we have an LLC or an S corp or a C corp or a lot of different types of organizations, it's all about how do we structure those, because for those of you that don't know, there's two reasons for an entity that isn't just asset protection, it's also tax treatment. So tax treatment is a big deal when it comes to structure. So that's why I used to just form an entity, form an entity, form an entity in my earlier days, guys. And I'm not ashamed to admit to you, it wasn't that long ago. It's been within the last 6 years where I started understanding how much more important it is to know why the entity is and the structure of the entity. Is it a member managed, manager managed, LLC? What state are we in? Because in the state of California, you don't want to do an LLC for a lot of different things. So getting somebody involved that knows your state's dynamics and knows your personal dynamics and knows your complete entity chart, that is going to be very, very critical to make sure that you're getting your structure properly. You want to pay yourself tax efficiently. We all know that. And that's going to be done through, well, let's talk about that. So, and I did drill down on this on our last month's meeting, but you're going to have a CPA that's conservative, that doesn't want to have any what's the word I'm looking for? Any audits done in his office. He's going to tell you, look, if you run an auto repair shop and you would have paid someone $100,000 to run that auto repair shop, well, then you should be paying yourself 100 to 120 grand. And I think 120 grand is what they call a safe harbor. So maybe it's 150. Don't quote me on that, but there's a safe harbor amount where if you pay yourself that number, then you're assuring yourself not being audited for that. I have never been at the safe harbor number, guys, and everybody has to choose their own path. But I've always been less than I would have probably paid someone to be in that position, simply because I had numerous other people, numerous other stores and other things that I was doing. So I was paying myself less than that, and that was paying myself more tax efficiently because it was less payroll taxes and as well as less Social Security. There was a whole lot less going on for that, and it was at a lower tax bracket that I was getting paid the rest of what I was getting paid. So everybody has to walk that line for themselves, but you want to make sure that you're paying yourself as efficiently as possible, and you always want to plan your exit before you go into any project. That also is going to help you determine what the asset is, what the structure is, what the entity, not the asset, excuse me, the entity is. So very, very important that planning is taking place at the beginning, not halfway through. I've made the mistake of not having the right structure to begin with and having to go back and fix it, and it's a little bit of work, right? So we want to invest, and let me give you an example of that because I think it's pretty important. I opened up as a sole proprietorship. My CPA told me that don't worry about it. You don't need to be a corporation. I guess he thought that I would always only own $180,000 Chevy, 180,000 mile, not dollar, but mile Chevy Impala, and be a renter, because that's what I was when I opened my business, right? So I didn't need the protection that an entity gave me, maybe in his mind, but I had to go back and unwind all that and switch it all over to an S corp eventually. That was a lot of work and a lot of wasted time and a lot of wasted money. I can tell you that was quite a few CPAs ago, right? So he meant well. I don't criticize that, but that was not the greatest of advice, right? So we want to plan our exit before we go into any project. And then invest tax efficiently. Savvy tax planning is the lowest risk way to immediately boost your investment returns. Making sure that you're receiving funds at the lowest tax bracket, helping that blended tax rate come down, is the way to be, without any additional risk whatsoever, no additional capital on the line. You're going to make more money. That is a beautiful thing. So in general, and this is generally speaking, long-term capital growth investments should be in your taxable accounts. And ordinary income cash flow investments go into your tax-advantaged accounts. What's a tax-advantaged account? That's going to be your Roth. That's going to be your IRAs, your retirement accounts. That's what's going to be a much more efficient way. In other words, if I'm flipping houses, if I'm a hard money lender flipping with a house flipper, and I'm basically loaning him the money and being the bank with a secured note on the house, and I'm making 12% returns, that's ordinary income. Okay, that is taxed at the ordinary income from whatever state that I'm in, right? So that's just like W-2 income. But if I'm doing it in my Roth, there is no tax. So it's very important that you understand those things. It isn't what you're making, it's what you're keeping that matters. And the vehicle that you use is going to be very, very important. Okay? So just know that that's a big part of the planning, is to know what vehicle to use, guys. And then this is here for business owners, right? Leverage your unrealized gains to compound tax-free. It's also for real estate investors that are using 1031s, right? Those are your unrealized gains that you're flipping into a new property. Then you're compounding your wealth tax-free. Same thing with business owners. If you're using the equity in your existing business, maybe to buy equipment, which will allow you to make more money, maybe it's to buy a second location. You're leveraging those unrealized gains that you have not even been taxed on, and you're growing those tax-free, compounding those tax-free. And then continuing with tax drag principles, number 3, pay with pre-tax dollars, guys. That's going to be run through, and it's going to be put all of your legitimate expenses, and I know this is basic for some of you, in your to your business, so you get an automatic discount. Remember, it's an advantage for those of you that don't know. If you've got an LLC and you're running a business through the LLC, rather than like an employee having taxes paid out before you even get the cash or get your check, you're going to have the luxury of running expenses through that business prior to having your tax exposure. So very, very important. And then we talked about this already. Plan before you play. Plan the tax impact before you play. Meet regularly with your tax strategist and keep them in the loop as early as possible. I am very, very bad at that up until recently. And look, guys, I pay for something called a CFO service where I meet with my guy pretty regularly. He speaks from stages, so he's not very, very easy to get a hold of, but I have his cell phone number. And even with me, it's sometimes a 24 to 48 hour response, unless I talk to somebody in his office. But he'll get on the horn with me, and I can bounce some things off him. I just texted him yesterday. We're going to get together later today for a 5-minute call for some questions I have about the laundromat that I shared with you guys. So how we're going to jump into that as well. So